Welcome to our mechanics video about RADIUS as a service. We would like to show you how to get started. My name is Jochen, and today I have brought Felix with me, one of our developers behind RADIUS as a service. A short sum up, what is RADIUS as a service? It's a cloud service, which is used to provide a certificate-based RADIUS authentication to your clients, let's say, to join the Wi-Fi with certificates. The backend is hosted in Azure on a Kubernetes cluster, and so this is a complete software as a service solution. A short diagram overview of the RADIUS infrastructure. We have the clients over there, which use EIP TLS as the only protocol to do the authentication. Our service, the RADIUS as a service endpoint, is able to use RadSec as protocol, as well as some older protocol RADIUS. And we enable you to use your own PKI infrastructure, or you can click and easily configure a small online hosted PKI, which we provide for you as a service. As I said, we have two authentication protocols we support. The RadSec, which is a little bit more modern, it's more secure. And of course, we support also the RADIUS protocol. We support you, or we enable you to use certificates for user device authentication. As well, you can use username and password. This is a newer feature with our RADIUS as a service solution. You can bring your own CA with you, or you can use, let's say, Scapman. If you have our Scapman service running, you can use the Scapman provider CA. We scale up to 100,000 users, no problem for us. We have a high availability, which is provided by Microsoft Azure, because we're using a Kubernetes cluster behind our service. Each customer is, of course, isolated against all other customers. Every customer gets the default RADIUS port. There are no different port types for different customers, so everyone gets the default service port. And to get started, we need to configure our tenant. So Felix, how to get the tenant? What's the easiest way to get up and running?
Yeah, so the easiest way is the Azure Marketplace, where you can easily subscribe. So just go to your Azure tenant, to the Azure Marketplace, search for RADIUS, and our solution could be found easily. Select your subscription plan if you want to use monthly or yearly. Just click on subscribe, select your subscription, your resource group, give it a proper name, and then click on review and subscribe. Now the SaaS subscription will be provisioned within your Azure tenant, and after the provisioning is complete on the Azure side, we will be able to configure our account now, where we can select how many users we want to license. All right, so our subscription is ready on the Azure side. So we go to configure account now. So there we are on the detailed side. We select how many users we want to license and see the overall cost. And enter our contact details. The technical contact email will also be the UPN or the email address which we use to set up your administrative account on the RADIUS side. Therefore, it has to have an mailbox behind that. For that test, we are just using our RADIUS as a service support mail. Submit. All right. Now someone will configure your backend, and you will receive an email within normally a business day, where you receive all your details of where your RADIUS instance is accessible, and which account can be used. So let's jump onto your RADIUS side, which will be looking similar different to that one. You will use as login, it is an Azure AD login. With my account, it's currently a single sign-on, so you don't see the login, typical Azure login site. On the homepage, you can see how many users you have licensed and how many proxies you can install. For what you probably need proxies, we'll come to that in a few minutes. But want to focus to connecting your clients. So on the inside side, you can see the radius logs of the instance, and under settings, we can see the IP address of the Radius server, which is only providing RadSec access. And you can see which server certificate your instance is currently using. That certificate is a self-signed certificate from the Azure Key Vault. The only devices which have issues with that is Android devices, and we're also recommending to use a CA certificate or a certificate which was issued by a CA for your Radius server. For that, you can, of course, use your own PKI and issue a certificate for your Radius server and upload it here, or use the feature of creating your own CA within that platform, which will generate a small CA and issue one server certificate for your instance. Now your CA is ready, and the certificate has been issued for your server. Here on the right, we can see which certificate your server is currently using. And we want to switch to our created one. Just activate it, and your Radius server will immediately use that certificate. For the client provisioning later on, we will need the CA certificate that our client can trust the Radius connection. For that, download the green highlighted certificate. And we need to do one more configuration on that side. And we have to tell the Radius server which certificates are enabled to connect to your Radius server. For that, you will have to upload either the CA certificate of the CA which your clients receive their certificate, or simply use the Scapman URL. We are not going into the details of Scapman. It's a cloud PKI solution which runs in your tenant, and therefore easy to use with Radius as a service. Just add the URL, and there you can see the certificate details of your Scapman instance. As I've said, your Radius server currently is only able to speak RadSec, which is Radius over TLS. Unfortunately, not every Wi-Fi or network vendor is able to speak that protocol, and therefore you will probably have to have an interface which is speaking the traditional Radius protocol over UDP. For that, you can install a proxy within your website, which will create a Radius proxy in the background, which will open the UDP interface, which your clients or your Meraki instance can connect to. This can take up to 5 minutes, so we can start to configure our clients that it's getting a certificate. For that, we need also the root certificate of our CA, which our clients will use. And then we can start creating the profiles for that. We need 2 trusted certificate profiles. One for our Radius. And we need one for our Scapman root. Right. Now we need a SCAP certificate profile for our clients, that the client will have a certificate to authenticate against the Radius platform. So we need a profile of the type SCAP certificate. Right, we want to use a device certificate with a validity of 6 months. As a key storage provider, we will use software case P. The key usage is key size bit. That for the hash algorithm. As root certificate, we need to select the skepman root. And that our client is able to use that certificate for the actual authentication. It needs the extended key usage client authentication. Here we need the skep service URL. Right. Next. And the group again. All right. Now we have to wait until all of these profiles are received by our client.
So let's check our demo client, I would say.
Yeah.
And the easiest way is to trigger the synchronization of the Intune profiles. Therefore, you can click on accounts, access work or school, then click on the Azure AD connected to tenant, then on the info button, and down there is the sync button. We click on sync. This will trigger the sync. Otherwise, you can just wait.
Yeah. But it can take up to an hour or so.
Yeah, it depends on the Azure performance sometimes. And during the sync is running, we can check their certificate store. We should see our SCEP certificate in our personal store, and we should see our two trusted roots, which Felix just configured some minutes ago. Therefore, we have the SCEP root certificate, and if we...
Yeah, on Azure side it stays pending, so I think we have to wait a few minutes.
Yep.
So maybe just go to the account sync and just trigger the sync.
Okay, now the sync completed, and we can check our certificates. And as you can see, we have the Skepman root CA available, also the Radius demo cust CA, which we just created, those two. So we are ready for the next step. So we switch back to Felix.
Let's see if the proxy is installed. Yeah, it's finished. All right, we can have a look into the logs if the proxy is connecting. So yeah, it started a few minutes ago. And there we see the TLS connection to the Radius server. So this connection is up. Now we can switch to our Meraki lab and prepare the SSID for our client. So we rename that to demo and enable it. Add. And go into the settings. Under the settings, we want the authentication with my Radius server. And here we can enter the details, which you can see under your server settings. So now there are a few more entries because you have installed, or we have installed a Radius proxy. We need the IP address. And we need the shared secret. And Meraki has a test function, so you can test if your access point can reach the Radius server and the authentication will go through. For that, we will have to create a username and password pair. So we just go to users, add the user test, and use the password hello. Created username test and the password hello. So the authentication passed, and you can also check within the log that the authentication gone through. So here's the access accept. And that's pretty much it on the Meraki side. Just save the chat settings. And now we will have to prepare the Wi-Fi profile for our client. For that, we switch back to Intune, or to Windows, configuration profiles, later, enterprise network, our SSID's demo, our connection name is also demo. Want to connect automatically. And we want to use a machine authentication. That way our client can look into his device certificate store and also log into the Wi-Fi network before the user has logged in. So it's a machine-based Wi-Fi. As authentication type, we want to use TLS. For the server trust, the server certificates names can be viewed here on the server settings side. Under the active certificate, we will select the common name of our certificate as well as the SAN attribute that our client can validate the connection within with the Radius server. And we want to let our client verify the identity with the CA certificate from the Radius server, or the CA certificate where the Radius server has his certificate from. And the client should authenticate with a SCAP certificate. And for that, we select our previously created SCAP device certificate profile. Click on Next. Add the group. And next, create. All right, and now we can switch back to our test client and trigger the sync again.
Once again, we are now in accounts, access worker school, and on our managed instance. We click on sync and wait for the sync to be finished.
Yeah, and maybe we can also go to the non-networks so that we can see that there's no profile or
Correct.
it magically pops up.
Wireless, Wi-Fi settings. Then we begin to manage no networks. And currently we have no managed network. And if the sync completes, we will see our currently configured Wi-Fi. After the sync is successful, we will see the configured Wi-Fi profile over here. And we should be able to see it here. And currently I'm connected via wire, but we can see that now that connection works. And if I'm not connected to the Ethernet cable, it will auto-connect to the wireless profile.
Yeah, it should be. If you disable the Wi-Fi and re-enable it,
it comes back online.
Yeah, sometimes Windows needs a minute or kind of.
But maybe to remember, we need some kind of internet connection to get up and running. Because if we don't have internet connection, we don't get the certificate profiles, also the wireless profiles won't reach the client. And if we would like to do it through wireless with Radius and certificate-based authentication, we're getting that chicken egg problem that we don't get the certificates to enroll. So either you take a network cable or you join the Radius with a username and password. It's also possible. And afterwards, you can switch back to certificate-based authentication.
Yeah.
As you can see, it works.
Yeah, and if you're now interested in testing Radius as a service, you just go to radiusrs.com, click on Start Now, and here at the end you have a Try Radius RS or Drop Us a Question link, where you can fill in your details and provide us a message, and we will reach out to you soon. But we also have a link of all our support and contact websites within the description of this video.
We will post it below the video so that you can easily click on it.
Yeah.
And that's it. Radius deployment as fast as possible.
Yeah.
If you have any questions during your deployment, you can also use the form, and we will assist you. And thank you for paying attention.
Yeah.
Goodbye.
Bye-bye.